The scorching sun hovered over Ouagadougou when Ibrahim Traoré, the bold and enigmatic leader of Burkina Faso, summoned his inner circle to the presidential palace. Rumors had been swirling for months. Africa's resources were once again the battleground for distant powers. But this time, Traoré was determined to turn the tables. His eyes were fixed on a name that resonated across continents: Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel's quiet expansion of influence in certain African corridors had been a whisper on the lips of diplomats for years. Advanced surveillance systems, covert arms deals, and political strings pulled in secret chambers. Traoré knew all about them. But unlike his predecessors, he had no intention of playing the obedient partner in a lopsided game. Inside the high-ceilinged meeting room, the air was tense. Maps of the Sahel, intelligence reports, and satellite images covered the long oak table. Traoré stood at its head, his military uniform immaculate, the 4 stars on his shoulder glinting in the harsh light. "My brothers," he began, his voice low but razor-sharp, "for too long we have been pawns. We trade our minerals, our land, and even our silence. While they trade in secrets and profit in chaos, Netanyahu believes he can tighten his grip on our politics, our security. He is wrong." An aide, young and nervous, slid a dossier across the table. Inside were intercepted cables, evidence of Israeli envoys pressuring neighboring leaders to back a new security pact that would grant Israeli firms exclusive mining rights in the disputed border zones. The move would not only drain Burkina Faso's wealth, but also bind its security apparatus to Tel Aviv's technological leash. Traoré's closest advisor, Colonel Sori Diabate, leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "If we resist, they will destabilize us. They have done it before." A flicker of defiance crossed Traoré's face. "Let them try. This time Africa fights back. I will gather an alliance, Sahelian leaders who are tired of being manipulated. We will expose the deals, disrupt the networks, and if necessary, shut down the pipelines that feed their influence." Outside the palace walls, the city pulsed with life. Markets bustled, children played soccer in dusty lots, and merchants argued over sacks of millet. They had no idea that behind those heavy doors, their president was preparing to confront a giant whose reach extended from Jerusalem to Washington. As dusk settled, Traoré dismissed his men, remaining alone with the silent hum of the air conditioner. He poured himself a glass of water, his thoughts racing faster than his pulse. He knew Netanyahu would not sit idle. The Israeli prime minister was a master tactician, cunning, patient, and unafraid to unleash covert chaos to protect his nation's strategic interests. But Traoré was equally resolute. In his mind, he repeated the phrase he would soon broadcast to his people and the world: "Africa bows to no empire." And so, the first move in Traoré's gambit was set. 2 days after the secret council, Ibrahim Traoré stood on the marble steps of Burkina Faso's National Assembly, surrounded by a sea of journalists. The entire capital seemed to hold its breath as he addressed not just his people, but every power broker from Tel Aviv to Washington. "My fellow Burkinabe and my brothers and sisters across Africa," he declared, his voice echoing over the courtyard. "Today, we declare a new doctrine. Our resources, our sovereignty, our dignity, untouched by foreign hands, unbent by foreign threats." Cameras flashed. Across the world, embassies scrambled to prepare statements. Netanyahu's cabinet watched live, their unease masked behind carefully worded press releases. Within hours, Traoré's speech triggered diplomatic aftershocks. Israel's ambassador requested an urgent audience. Denied. Intelligence agencies flagged Burkina Faso's sudden troop movements near contested mining regions. For the first time in decades, a small African nation openly defied an Israeli-backed economic corridor. Inside Israel's prime ministerial office, Netanyahu listened to his security chiefs. They laid out satellite data, wiretaps, and a stack of classified reports. One of his trusted advisors, Eitan Barak, leaned closer and said what no one dared to say outright. Prime Minister, Traoré is rallying others. He has been speaking with Mali, Niger, and even some East African leaders. He's planning a Pan-African front to push us out. Netanyahu's eyes narrowed. He had weathered intifadas, nuclear threats, and diplomatic isolation. But an African rebellion, public and defiant, was an unpredictable variable. Worse, it risked pulling bigger powers into a fight Israel preferred to keep quiet. Eitan, Netanyahu said calmly, prepare the usual toolkit. Disinformation, division, and deniability. If Traoré wants to play chess, we will show him that Israel invented the game. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré convened another late-night session in his war room. His most trusted generals, civilian advisors, and a handful of foreign allies sat in a tight semicircle. On a large digital map, blinking red dots marked Israeli-owned mining contracts and security stations spread across the Sahel. Colonel Diabate stabbed a finger at one blinking light. If we hit this outpost, expose the illegal arms cache, they'll have no legal ground to claim security cooperation. Traoré nodded. Do it discreetly. No civilian casualties. We win the moral argument, too. One civilian aide, an expert in communications, interrupted with an urgent warning. Sir, Israeli bots and fake accounts are already flooding social media. They paint you as a dictator, a warmonger, someone who will drag Africa into unnecessary conflict. Traoré chuckled darkly. Then they fear me already. Good. He turned to a young woman from his digital team. Fight fire with fire. Show the people who truly drains our gold and controls our borders. Facts first, then passion. The room buzzed with quiet determination. Traoré knew what was at stake. If he lost, he'd become another cautionary tale, another African leader who dared too much and vanished in a coup or a car bomb. But if he won, he would carve a new chapter for the continent. An Africa that dictated its own fate. At dawn, as the city slowly awoke, Traoré stood at his window. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the first hints of sunlight broke through the Sahelian dust. One continent, one chance, one gambit. Night fell over the Sahel like a velvet curtain. But in a small covert base near the Niger border, Traoré's Special Operations Unit prepared for the first tangible strike in his unfolding gambit. The team, led by Captain Idrissa Konate, was hand-picked, loyal, discreet, and highly trained. Their mission: infiltrate a lightly guarded mining outpost run by an Israeli-linked security contractor, seize evidence of illegal arms stockpiles, and leak it to the international press before dawn. In the dim glow of red tactical lights, Konate addressed his squad. Remember, no glory, no noise, no blood, unless they force us. Our weapons tonight are truth and proof, not bullets. He gave a curt nod, and they disappeared into the scrubland like ghosts. Hundreds of miles away, Netanyahu sat in a dark conference room with his national security team. Reports of Traoré's upcoming raid had just reached Mossad through a well-placed mole inside the Burkina military. Netanyahu drummed his fingers on the polished table. Let him take the outpost, he said finally, his voice calm but icy. Leak just enough false intel to trap him in his own narrative. When he reveals the arms cache, the world will see evidence of our support for anti-government rebels in the Sahel. It will make him look like a madman inventing conspiracies. An advisor smirked. Classic misdirection. He thinks he's playing chess, but he's on our board. Meanwhile, as Konate's team reached the perimeter, they found the compound nearly deserted. Too deserted. Suspicion tickled Konate's instincts. He signaled his tech officer, a wiry kid named Yahya, to hack into the outpost security feed. Yahya frowned, whispering, "Sir, there's no live feed. Cameras are looping old footage. And the crates, they're all wired with redundant trackers." Konate cursed under his breath. It was a trap. A perfectly staged theater meant to be discovered and broadcast. Still, orders were orders. They breached the main warehouse, recorded every crate stamped with medical equipment, but filled with military-grade rifles. Yahya streamed it to Traoré's crisis team back in Ouagadougou. When the footage aired on state TV and went viral online, the reaction was instant. Explosive anger on African social media, calls for UN investigations, and shocked statements from neighboring leaders. But the counterattack came just as fast. Anonymous videos proved that Traoré himself had orchestrated the arms stash to frame Israel. Western commentators parroted the new narrative. Burkina Faso's leader was risking a regional war based on a staged hoax. Inside the presidential palace, Traoré slammed his fist on the conference table, rattling his advisors. "Did you think they'd stay idle?" Diabaté challenged him calmly. "This is Netanyahu's strength. Smoke, mirrors, doubt. He makes you look unstable until your allies abandon you." Traoré breathed deeply, fighting the anger clawing at his throat. He scanned the room, his generals and tech teams waiting for his next move. "We double down," he said finally. "They want confusion? We show consistency. We need a leak from inside their circle, something undeniable. It's time to reach out to those who want Netanyahu gone just as badly as we do." His eyes fell on a name in the intelligence folder. A disgraced ex-Mossad handler now hiding in South Africa. A man with secrets worth a king's ransom. Far from the deserts of Burkina Faso, a political chessboard stretched across embassies, back channels, and shadowy safe houses. And for the first time, the world wondered, could this African upstart really outplay the old master of covert wars? A small, unmarked jet touched down on a dusty runway outside Pretoria, South Africa. Inside, Traoré's personal envoy, Minister of Strategic Affairs Adama Traoré, clutched a leather briefcase containing two things, a promise of asylum and a suitcase full of untraceable cash. Waiting in the shadows was their target, Yaakov Shalev, a former Mossad handler turned fugitive, a man who once orchestrated regime changes across the continent before falling out of favor when he blackmailed the wrong Knesset member. Now, hiding among Johannesburg's diamond smugglers and black market brokers, Shalev had become both dangerous and desperate. Traoré approached carefully. "Mr. Shalev, President Traoré sends you greetings. He offers you a choice. Vanish into obscurity and poverty, or help him expose Netanyahu's network and walk free under our protection." Shalev's eyes, cold and calculating, flicked to the briefcase. "You think I fear death more than I fear Mossad? They'll find me in whatever hole you dig for me." Traoré smiled slightly, opening the briefcase just enough for Shalev to see the documents. Forged passports, safe-house coordinates, and bank account numbers in Switzerland. "Or," Traoré continued, lowering his voice, "you help us bury Netanyahu's secret deals, and you live the rest of your life like a ghost king, untouchable. All we ask for is the truth. The cables, the payments, the covert bribes." Shalev chuckled bitterly. "The African president thinks he can end the great Netanyahu machine with a few leaks." Traoré leaned in, unblinking. He plans to collapse it with a storm of truth that not even the Americans can ignore." Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré paced in his private study, listening on a secure line. He knew time was running thin. Netanyahu's disinformation campaign had already cost him a key ally in the West African Monetary Union. Rumors of an internal coup were surfacing. Foreign journalists began arriving, hungry for chaos. As Traoré paused by the window, he watched a crowd gathering outside the palace gates, students waving flags chanting his name. It gave him a flicker of hope. Despite the smear campaign, his people believed him. But how long would belief withstand Israeli psyops and Western cynicism? Suddenly, the encrypted phone crackled. Traoré's voice came through, tense but victorious. "Mr. President," Shalev agreed. He's giving us the files, everything. Payments to rebel leaders, hacked election results, bribes to military officers in Chad and Mali. He wants extraction tonight. Traoré's eyes gleamed. He whispered to himself, Netanyahu thinks he owns the shadows. Let's drag his secrets into the sun. 3 hours later, a covert drone lifted off a clandestine runway outside Pretoria, carrying Shalev, 2 guards, and a drive containing more political dynamite than Africa had seen in decades. But in Jerusalem, Netanyahu was not blind to betrayal. As his cyber teams traced encrypted chatter between Pretoria and Ouagadougou, a single order was given to a sleeper cell embedded deep in Burkina Faso's capital. Shalev must never speak. Make it look like Traoré silenced him. Unbeknownst to the hopeful students chanting outside the palace gates, the real battle had begun, where bullets were quieter than lies, and truth was the most lethal weapon of all. The drone touched down under the cover of darkness on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. Shalev, pale and sweating, stepped out into the dry night air. He was escorted by Colonel Diabaté and a trusted unit who immediately shielded him from any curious eyes. Inside a fortified safe house, deep within a government compound, Shalev sat in front of a secure terminal. On the screen glowed the crown jewels of Netanyahu's covert empire, transaction logs showing money funneled to warlords, fake NGOs laundering influence payments, backdoor cybersecurity deals that siphoned African voter data to Tel Aviv. Traoré entered the room, his footsteps measured, his face an iron mask. He locked eyes with Shalev, then with the blinking cursor waiting for a final authorization code to unlock the full files. You understand? Traoré said quietly. If you lie to me now, you will not fear Mossad, you will fear me. Shalev's voice cracked with fatigue and dread. I have burned my bridges, Mr. President. I only want to see Netanyahu humiliated before I disappear. He typed the final code. The files decrypted, line by line, revealing decades of backroom manipulations, coups disguised as civil unrest, arms disguised as humanitarian aid, elections manipulated with algorithms made in Israeli cyber labs. Traoré leaned over Shalev's shoulder, absorbing the damning evidence. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. But across town, a silent threat crept closer. In a bustling neighborhood near the safe house, a dark van idled under a broken streetlight. Inside, 3 men, lean and cold-eyed, checked their weapons and silencers. They were deep-cover operatives, speaking flawless local dialects, appearing as normal vendors by day. Tonight, they had a single mission: eliminate Shalev and leave traces pointing straight back to Traoré's security team. Orders clear? The driver asked. Crystal, the lead assassin murmured. Shalev dies, we plant the documents. Traoré gets blamed. West turns on him overnight. They slipped out of the van, disappearing into the maze of alleys leading to the safe house perimeter. Inside the safe house, Diabaté was the first to sense something was wrong. The security cameras flickered, just for a second, but long enough for an old soldier's instincts to scream. Mr. President, he hissed, hand on his sidearm. Someone's coming. We have to move Shalev now. Traoré didn't hesitate. He grabbed Shalev by the arm. Back exit now! The power cut plunged the building into darkness, followed by the muffled crack of suppressed gunfire at the front gate. Traoré's loyal guards fired back, shouts and staccato bursts of gunfire echoing through the compound. Diabaté shoved open a concealed passageway leading to the adjoining building, a dusty storage facility. He pushed Shalev ahead, his own weapon drawn and ready. Outside, the assassins realized their window was closing. One cursed under his breath, triggering a small flashbang grenade to scatter the guards. The courtyard turned into chaos. Dust, smoke, shadows moving fast under flickering floodlights. In the confusion, Shalev stumbled and fell, clutching the briefcase that contained the only other physical copy of his files. Traoré hauled him up. adrenaline overriding fear. "Stay with me!" Traoré barked as bullets thudded into crates inches from his head. Finally, a battered armored SUV screeched around the corner. Diabaté shoved Shalev into the back seat, then covered Traoré as he dove in after him. The SUV tore away from the safe house just as a second explosion rocked the compound, sending flames curling into the night sky. For Traoré, survival tonight meant one thing. Shalev's files had to reach the world before Netanyahu's agents erased every last piece of truth. As the SUV sped into the desert darkness, Traoré whispered to himself, voice low and lethal, "They want war in the shadows, so be it. I will bring it into the light." The armored SUV roared down a dusty back road cutting through the scrublands east of Ouagadougou. Inside, the atmosphere was electric, part desperation, part defiance. Shalev lay slumped between Diabaté and Traoré, clutching the battered briefcase to his chest like a life raft. Traoré barked orders into a secure radio. "Listen to me carefully. Shut down the main highway checkpoints. Divert all city patrols west. We need a clean corridor to the embassy district. And scramble drones. If they try to tail us, I want them exposed on every screen in Africa by dawn." Diabaté checked Shalev's pulse. He was pale but conscious. "Stay awake, old man. You're more valuable alive than dead tonight." Shalev wheezed a laugh. "I've survived Tehran, Damascus, Yaik, and now this African desert. Just make sure my funeral is somewhere warm if I don't make it." Back in Jerusalem, Netanyahu's top cyber tactician, Eitan Barak, hunched over a live feed of satellite images and hacked CCTV cameras. The convoy had slipped out of the kill zone, but for now, they still glowed like a ghost on his thermal overlays. "Prime Minister," Eitan said into his headset, voice tight. "He's moving the asset. He'll run straight for a foreign embassy, UN, maybe ECOWAS, maybe even an American station. If Shalev talks, we lose all leverage." Netanyahu's voice came back low and lethal. "Then remind them who they're dealing with. I want that SUV gone before it crosses city limits. No loose ends, Eitan. Not tonight." On the outskirts of the city, the SUV skidded to a halt near an abandoned radio tower. Traoré's plan was simple but audacious. Use the old tower's uplink to broadcast Shalev's files to every major African news network and drop the data to trusted contacts in Europe before the convoy could be intercepted. While Diabaté's men set up the satellite transmitter, Traoré knelt beside Shalev inside the SUV. "Yakov, listen to me," Traoré said, voice tight with urgency. "In 5 minutes, the world will have your files. After that, you go into our protection program. You disappear forever. Can you do this?" Shalev gave a ghost of a nod. "Give me the terminal." They helped him out into the open. The desert wind whipped through the tower's broken antennae. Shalev plugged in an encrypted drive, fingers trembling as he triggered file transfers to secure nodes in Dakar, Nairobi, and Geneva. Diabaté scanned the horizon through night vision goggles. "Movement, fast, armored jeeps, they found us." Traoré didn't flinch. He turned to his men. "Hold them off! Every second counts, no retreat!" The first bullet screamed past the tower, pinging off rusted steel beams. Diabaté and his squad fired back with disciplined bursts, muzzle flashes cutting through the night. Sparks showered over Shalev's makeshift command center. Suddenly, Shalev coughed blood onto his keyboard. A bullet had found him, somewhere unseen. He looked up at Traoré with an ironic grin, crimson teeth flashing. "I told you, Tehran was easier," he rasped. The progress bar on his screen hit 90%. Traoré grabbed the drive from Shalev's dying grip, jamming it into a backup terminal. 93%. 97%. A rocket-propelled grenade exploded at the base of the tower, shaking the platform violently. Traoré shielded the screen with his body. 100%. Transmission complete. Diabaté yanked Traoré back, just as the next explosion ripped through the tower's foundation, sending sparks and debris raining down. Minutes later, in newsrooms from Nairobi to Paris, journalists gasped as a sudden torrent of leaked files filled their inboxes. Proof of a secret empire that had manipulated Africa's veins of gold, uranium, and votes for decades. As dawn bled over the Sahel, Ibrahim Traoré stood among the ruins of the old tower, blood and dust staining his uniform. He stared eastward toward the rising sun. He whispered to the ghost of Shalev and to the world now watching. "Now, Netanyahu, let's see how you fight in daylight." The first light of dawn found Ouagadougou in chaos. News networks replayed Traoré's leak on endless loops, bank records, secret arms deals, bribed generals. African capitals buzzed with outrage. Some leaders praised Traoré as a hero, others, terrified of exposure, condemned him as reckless. Inside his battered war room, Traoré barely slept. His advisors urged him to go public again, address the continent before Netanyahu's counterattack could twist the narrative. Colonel Diabaté laid out the situation bluntly. "Your people believe you, but foreign powers don't. They call you unstable. Some even whisper that Israel might back a coup." Traoré smirked. "Let them whisper. I have one more move." In Jerusalem, Netanyahu was cornered but far from defeated. He framed the leaks as fabricated nonsense by a rogue African dictator. Western allies, worried about regional security, started to distance themselves from Traoré publicly, while quietly asking for his protection behind closed doors. Eitan Barak, his cyber chief, approached with new intelligence. "Prime Minister, there's one file Traoré hasn't released yet, proof of your direct orders for regime change operations. If he shares that, you lose Washington." Netanyahu's eyes turned cold. "Then we don't wait. We end this man before he ends us." That night, Traoré's convoy moved to an underground bunker outside the city. His inner circle gathered around a flickering laptop as he prepared his final broadcast, one message to unite Africa and break Netanyahu's last line of defense: doubt. He looked at Diabaté. "Once this goes out, there's no turning back. They will come for me harder than ever." Diabaté simply saluted. "Then let them come. Africa stands with you now." Traoré pressed record. His voice rolled out across a continent and beyond. "To my brothers and sisters in Africa, we are no longer someone else's playground. We are the players now. We will not bow. We will not be bought. If I fall, rise in my place. Africa bows to no empire. Never again." Outside, in the humid Sahel night, the bunker guards tightened their grip on their rifles. Somewhere beyond the darkness, foreign mercenaries closed in. The final battle was near. Within hours of Traoré's fiery broadcast, the world split in two. Young Africans flooded streets in support, waving flags and chanting his name. Meanwhile, foreign capitals held emergency meetings, fearing an open break with Israel could spark regional chaos. Inside the bunker, Traoré watched grainy drone feeds of armed vehicles moving toward his position. Diabaté handed him a rifle. "They're using mercenaries, deniable, but clearly Israeli-funded." Traoré loaded the weapon calmly. "Let them come. We have given the world the truth. Now we hold the line." In Jerusalem, Netanyahu's war room buzzed with tension. Eitan Barak reported grimly, "Social media is exploding in Traoré's favor. Even some Western journalists are calling him a freedom fighter." Netanyahu slammed his palm on the desk. "No more leaks, no more speeches. End him tonight. If he dies a martyr, so be it. Dead men don't negotiate." At the bunker's perimeter, the first shots cracked through the Sahel night. Traoré's loyal guards returned fire fiercely, determined to buy every minute for their president. Inside, Traoré recorded one last message, his voice calm over gunfire. "If I fall today, know that the dream does not die with me. Africa is awake, and this time we write our own story." Diabaté burst in. "Sir, we must move you. Now." Traoré grabbed the encrypted drive containing every remaining secret yet to be leaked. Not without this. If they silence me, this will speak louder. He and Diabaté dashed into an escape tunnel as an explosion rocked the bunker behind them. Dust and gunfire filled the air, hope and fear mingling in every heartbeat. Above ground, the world's eyes were fixed on a single question. Would Traoré survive the night, or would Africa lose its boldest challenger before dawn? Traoré and Diabaté stumbled through the narrow tunnel, lit only by flickering emergency lamps. Behind them, the bunker was ablaze, enemy gunfire echoing like thunder underground. Diabaté spoke between ragged breaths. "Extraction team is 5 minutes out. If we reach the old airstrip, we're clear." Traoré gripped the drive tight in his palm. "This isn't just my life story. It's proof that Africa cannot be bought again." Above them, the mercenaries closed in, sweeping the compound with thermal drones. In distant capitals, news anchors spoke breathlessly of a coup in progress. Yet the people in the streets were not panicking. They were rallying. Traoré had become more than a president. He was a symbol. Netanyahu watched the chaos from Jerusalem, flanked by security chiefs. His phone buzzed with calls from Washington, Paris, and London, some furious, some pleading for calm. He muttered under his breath, "This boy made himself a martyr too soon." Aitan, his loyal cyber chief, interrupted. "Sir, African leaders are now backing him openly. Sanctions won't work. If he survives tonight, we can't stop this wave." Netanyahu's eyes narrowed. "Then make sure he doesn't survive tonight." Near the abandoned airstrip, Traoré's extraction helicopter roared overhead. Dust and grit blasted his face as he and Diabaté sprinted from the tunnel mouth toward the landing zone, ducking bullets as tracers lit up the night. A sudden explosion threw Diabaté to the ground, injured but alive. Traoré dragged him up, adrenaline burning away fear. "Almost there, my brother. Hold on." As they reached the helicopter, the last wave of mercenaries opened fire. Traoré turned, emptying his rifle to cover his men boarding behind him. A bullet grazed his shoulder, but he stayed on his feet, defiant to the last. Inside the chopper, a young pilot yelled over the roar, "Mr. President, if we don't lift now, we're dead." Traoré threw one last look at the burning compound, at a nation now awake. "Take off!" The helicopter surged skyward, carrying Traoré and his final weapon, the truth that no bullet could bury. The helicopter sliced through the dawn sky, flying low over the dusty plains. Inside, Traoré pressed a blood-soaked bandage to his shoulder, while Diabaté, pale but conscious, held onto the encrypted drive like a sacred relic. Below them, Ouagadougou erupted in chants and celebration. Overnight, the people had poured into the streets, ignoring curfews, defying armored patrols. They carried handmade signs, "Africa bows to no empire." In Jerusalem, Netanyahu faced the worst defeat of his career. Global media flooded with undeniable proof. Western leaders distanced themselves, demanding inquiries. The iron grip he had built in Africa cracked overnight. A close advisor asked quietly, "What now, sir?" Netanyahu stared out his window, voice flat. Now we wait. Africa won a battle tonight. Let's see if they can win the war." In a hidden medical facility near the Ghanaian border, Traoré lay on a simple cot, arm bandaged, eyes wide open despite exhaustion. Diabaté sat nearby, guarding him even in sleep. A young journalist, flown in secretly, prepared to broadcast Traoré's first live interview since the escape. He adjusted the camera, asked softly, "Mr. President, do you have one message left for the world?" Traoré, bruised but unbroken, stared straight into the lens. His voice was steady, stronger than any bullet. "To every African child who ever thought power was forever foreign, look at me. Look at this struggle. We decide our fate now. Not Jerusalem, not Washington, not Paris. We do." He leaned back, closing his eyes as the broadcast lit up millions of screens. Outside, the morning sun rose over a continent forever changed, one gambit at a time. My fellow Africans, my brothers and sisters across this mighty continent, if tonight has proven anything, it is that our chains were never unbreakable. They were simply waiting for hands brave enough to shatter them. I did not stand against Netanyahu alone. I stood with every forgotten village, every stolen resource, every silenced voice that believed Africa could only serve. Tonight we proved them wrong. But hear me clearly, this victory is not the end. It is the spark. They will come again with lies, with money, with guns disguised as aid. They will whisper fear into our ears, stand firm, demand truth, protect each other, build nations where our wealth feeds our own children, not foreign bank vaults. And if they silence me tomorrow, let my words echo in your hearts. Africa bows to no empire. Not now, not ever again. Rise for yourselves, rise for your children, rise for the promise that we are no one's pawn. We are the masters of our own tomorrow. Thank you. And may the next dawn find us freer than this one.